Why does a 1749 military outpost still command one of the world's deepest natural harbors? The answer crosses that bridge. The Halifax-Dartmouth Ferry is North America's oldest saltwater ferry service. It still crosses the harbor daily, past towers that did not exist when it started. The Halifax Waterfront Boardwalk runs more than 4 kilometers along the harbor, past warehouses converted into shops and museums. A large Canadian flag marks the entrance to the downtown core, where glass office towers sit beside buildings that date to the city's founding as a British military outpost in 1749. Today, the same piers that once loaded naval supplies receive cruise ships carrying thousands of passengers into Atlantic Canada each summer. Cruise ships dock directly at the Halifax waterfront, close enough that passengers walk off the ship and onto the boardwalk. The harbor stays ice-free year-round, one reason it became a major naval and commercial port. Ferries still connect Halifax to Dartmouth across the harbor, a 10-minute crossing that has run continuously since the 18th century. The anchorage can handle the largest vessels on the Atlantic. Halifax grew around its harbor rather than along a river, unusual for a British colonial capital. The downtown grid follows the slope from Citadel Hill down to the water, with modern glass towers replacing older wooden structures block by block. At the harbor entrance, Point Pleasant Park preserves 75 hectares of forested land on the original military reserve. The city is the largest urban center in Atlantic Canada. The harbor's defenses were never tested by invasion, but they shaped the city's layout. Citadel Hill still overlooks the downtown, its star-shaped earthworks built to repel a land attack that never came. British engineers designed the streets in a grid pattern radiating from the fort, creating the skeleton of the modern city. Scottish settlers gave many place names to the surrounding coast, and their influence persists across Nova Scotia today. Peggys Cove sits on bare granite bedrock scraped clean by glaciers during the last ice age. About 30 people live here year-round. Lobster fishing remains the primary industry, and the boats still go out before dawn. The village has no natural soil. Residents built their houses directly on the granite, and the rock absorbs heat during the day and releases it at night. The exposed bedrock stretches for hundreds of meters around the harbor. Peggys Point Lighthouse was built in 1915 and still serves as an active aid to navigation. It stands on the same glacier-worn granite as the village, its white tower and red lantern room marking the coast for miles. The lighthouse even operated as a post office until 2009, one of the few in Canada to do so. Fishermen still use its light to find the harbor at night. The Atlantic coast around Peggys Cove receives some of the most powerful storms in Canada. Waves regularly crash over the granite rocks, sending spray higher than the lighthouse. The Red Lantern Room houses a fixed light that guides vessels along this dangerous stretch of shoreline. Several shipwrecks lie in the waters nearby, a reminder that the granite ledges here are unforgiving in fog and heavy seas. The octagonal lantern room at Peggys Point was designed to hold a lamp visible from several kilometers offshore. Today, it uses an automated electric light, though keepers maintained the lamp manually for most of the 20th century. Along the Nova Scotia coast, dozens of similar lighthouses still stand. Each marks a specific hazard: a shoal, a headland, or a narrow harbor entrance where fog and current make navigation difficult. George's Island sits in Halifax Harbor, its lighthouse guiding ships past the Narrows. The island served as a quarantine station for immigrants, and later as a military fortification with underground tunnels. Farther along the coast, the Port Mouton Lighthouse stands among trees on a quiet point. These towers were built by different communities, but served the same purpose: warning sailors away from the rocks. Carter's Beach looks unlike most of the Nova Scotia coast. Its white sand and turquoise water resemble a tropical beach more than an Atlantic one. The sand comes from crushed quartz and shell fragments, washed by tides that rise and fall several meters twice each day along this shore. Nova Scotia has over 7,400 kilometers of coastline, and much of it is rocky. Beaches like this one are rare. The dense evergreen forest behind the sand provides shelter from ocean winds. At low tide, the sand stretches wider, and the shallow water turns pale blue under clear skies. The Atlantic Ocean off Nova Scotia contains some of the richest lobster grounds in the world. Lobster boats work these waters year-round, hauling traps in waters that can turn violent within hours. The rocky cliffs along this stretch of coast break the force of the open ocean, sheltering the beaches and coves behind them. Oak Island covers about 140 acres and connects to the mainland by a narrow causeway. Since the 1790s, people have searched here for buried treasure in a shaft known as the Money Pit. No treasure has ever been found, but the digging continues. The island's oak trees are unusual in Nova Scotia, where spruce and fir dominate most forests. Some believe the oaks were planted deliberately, adding to the mystery. Autumn colors along the surrounding coast draw visitors each October when the hardwood turns red and gold. Lunenburg was founded in 1753 and is one of the best preserved British colonial settlements in North America. Its wooden houses follow a grid street plan laid out by surveyors before the first buildings went up. UNESCO recognized the town as a World Heritage Site in 1995. The town was a major shipbuilding center, producing schooners that fished the Grand Banks and traded across the Atlantic. The most famous, the Blue Nose, was launched in 1921 and never lost a race. Its image still appears on the Canadian 10-cent coin. St. John's Anglican Church in Lunenburg was built in 1754, the second oldest Protestant church in Canada. A fire gutted the building in 2001, but parishioners rebuilt it using original 18th century techniques, hand forging nails and cutting timber with period tools. Nearby, Mahone Bay is known for 3 churches standing side by side along its waterfront: Anglican, Lutheran, and United. Their steeples form one of the most photographed views in Atlantic Canada. The 3 churches of Mahone Bay were built by different congregations between 1826 and 1890. The Anglican Church has a red roof and crenellated tower, the Lutheran a white spire, and the United a classical portico. They stand within a few hundred meters of each other because the town's settlers came from different Protestant traditions. Each congregation built its own place of worship rather than sharing one. The result is a waterfront marked by 3 steeples. The Cornwallis River flows through the Annapolis Valley, Nova Scotia's most productive farming region. Acadian settlers built dikes here in the 1600s to reclaim farmland from the Bay of Fundy tides. Long Lake Provincial Park covers 2,100 hectares within Halifax city limits. It contains more than 20 lakes and a network of trails used by hikers and mountain bikers year-round. Nova Scotia is over 75% forested, one of the most heavily forested provinces in Canada. Spruce, fir, and birch dominate these woods, which grow back quickly after logging. Victoria Park in Truro is a 130-hectare urban park established in 1887. 2 waterfalls cascade down a forested gorge along its main trail. Marianne Falls cascades over 10 meters of rock ledges in the Cape Breton Highlands near the Cabot Trail. Paulet's Cove can be reached only by hiking trail or boat. A herd of wild horses has roamed its grassy slopes for decades, descendants of animals brought here by farmers who eventually abandoned the settlement. The cove sits within the Aspy Fault Wilderness Area on Cape Breton's north coast. The Cape Breton Highlands rise over 500 meters from the coast, part of the Appalachian chain extending south through the eastern United States. Mead Cove is the northernmost settlement on Cape Breton Island, with fewer than 100 residents. It sits on cliffs where the highlands drop straight into the Atlantic Ocean. The northern cardinal reaches the northern edge of its range in Nova Scotia. Its bright red plumage stands out against the dark evergreen forests where it feeds on seeds and insects. The Maritime Museum of the Atlantic in Halifax is the oldest and largest maritime museum in Canada. It holds artifacts from the Titanic and from the Halifax explosion of 1917. The Cabot Trail winds 298 kilometers through Cape Breton Highlands National Park, past cliffs that drop into the same ocean Halifax's harbor opens onto.